welcome back to Exploring AWS. In this video, we're going to talk about AWS's Global Accelerator. Now, let's just say that you have an internet-facing application. So here's our user coming in over the internet, right? So we're just going to say this is iNet here. And they come in over the internet, and let's just say that you have a web app in the background, or actually, let's say that it's more than a web app. Let's say that it's a web app, but you also have some type of a multiplayer gaming environment that you want to be able to not just load share, in other words, not just have spread out across multiple regions and be able to provide users with a pretty fast responding application, but you need to make sure that things like packet loss, jitter, latency are minimized. And unfortunately, you don't have any control over that in the internet. So when your user comes in over the internet, you really don't control what kind of performance they have here. So what Global Accelerator typically does is they actually route your requests through Amazon's global infrastructure, and it actually removes a lot of the different things like jitter, packet loss, and latency problems. And it actually improves the performance up to 60% within your application. So essentially what happens, let me actually scroll down here because they have a really cool diagram that kind of explains this. So if you just scroll down on the page, you'll see that they have a couple of different use cases here, and you can see where, you actually have a gaming environment where you could have multiple different setups here, if you will, and it goes through Amazon's Global Accelerator and then essentially inbound to where you have your EC2 game servers. So this is pretty cool. So you have multiple different gaming users and multiple different gaming sessions that are set up, and it goes through Amazon's essentially edge, which is the Global Accelerator, and then essentially is distributed into your application. That's ultimately not what I wanted to show you, but I just saw it and happened to point it out. It's kind of cool if you're one of those Call of Duty folks. Disclaimer, we used to actually, at a company I worked at, we used to have Call of Duty Fridays where we would literally spend all Friday. We would close the door. We would put meeting in session on the door so nobody came in, and we would just sit there, play Call of Duty for 8 hours. It was amazing. But anyway, so this is essentially what happens. You are assigned two global IP addresses when you essentially have the Global Accelerator service. So at the edge, you will be assigned these two global addresses. Now, behind this is where you're going to set up things like your application load balancer or your network load balancer, right? Imagine that these are distributed across your different regions or whatever. In fact, they have them here. I didn't even notice that. So you're going to have these two public-facing web addresses, and when your mobile client or when any user comes into your application, they're actually going to hit these two IP addresses. They're going to hit the Global Accelerator edge. And then what happens is that Global Accelerator is essentially going to be able to identify, okay, we have certain latency, or we have packet loss going to one environment or one region or whatever it may be, and it's going to be able to route your request logically to the best performing region for your application. So the Global Accelerator, think of it as like a smart load balancer that sits in front of your load balancer that's able to actually detect, okay, this user's coming in from, maybe the US, or maybe they're coming in from Canada, or maybe they're coming in from wherever. And based on the latency, based on the metrics that we're seeing, we need to route this user over to, maybe this region here, because they have lower latency, lower jitter, packet loss, etc. And then, of course, it goes through your load balancer, and it goes to, whichever web server, is handling that amount of requests, and then your application functions as normal. So it's important to note that essentially from here back is your standard application. You still have to build this out. So you would still go in, build your EC2 instances. You would still go and set up your load balancer and, your backend EFS storage, or, whatever it is that you're going to use. And then the Global Accelerator sits in front of it with the two IP addresses that essentially you're assigned to be able to load share your application. So Global Accelerator is a pretty cool feature that you can use to essentially be able to give your users the best performing application that you can.